It started like any other wedding: beautifully dressed guests, clinking glasses, soft violin music floating in the background, and white flowers everywhere. The kind of day you see in magazines. But under all that gloss, my hands were trembling. Not because I was heartbroken, God, that part had died long ago, but because I knew I shouldn't be here. Not at his wedding. Not in this role. I stood at the far corner of the ballroom, disguised in the black and white uniform they gave me an hour ago, hair tucked under a cap, name tag reading Sarah, not even close to my real name. But I wasn't here to serve food. I was here for something else. I watched him from across the room. Eric, the man I once believed I'd grow old with, the man who told me I was too much when I cried and too distant when I didn't, the man who left the day he found out I was pregnant, said he couldn't handle another broken piece in his life, and now here he was, laughing, hugging guests, kissing his bride's forehead like he hadn't wrecked 2 lives before this fairy tale began. I tightened my grip on the tray of champagne flutes, but kept my head down. They didn't recognize me. No one did. That was the plan. The speeches started, toasts from friends, a few drunk uncles cracking inside jokes, and then she stepped up. Her, the bride, Marissa, tall, perfect, polished, the kind of woman who smiled without creasing her makeup. She took the mic with the confidence of someone who believed the world owed her applause, and as she looked around the room, she smirked. "I just want to thank everyone for being here to celebrate our love," she began sweetly. "It's not always easy finding the right person. Sometimes it takes a few failed attempts." Laughter. But I knew from the moment I met Eric that I was saving him from something broken. The room chuckled again, this time louder. "I saved him from that broken woman," she said clearly, looking straight ahead. My heart pounded in my ears. Some people turned toward each other, laughing behind wine glasses. Others raised theirs in a toast. I stood there frozen, not because her words shocked me. They didn't. It was how easy it came out of her mouth. Like I was never human, just a speed bump on their way to happiness. I could have turned around and walked away right then. Could have dropped the tray, disappeared into the night, and left them all to toast their lies. But I didn't. Not because I wanted revenge, because someone else deserved the truth. I stepped forward slowly, each footstep heavier than the last. The weight of silence grew as guests noticed me walking to the front. They thought I was just another waitress refilling drinks, until I reached the mic. The room went still. I took off my hat, gasps, whispers. Recognition dawned on faces like a slow sunrise. Eric's jaw clenched, Marissa's smile faded. "I'm his daughter," I said, voice steady despite the storm inside, "and I have something to say." There was a moment, just one, that stretched so thin it felt like the room stopped breathing. Every fork paused mid-air. Every sip of champagne froze in place, and in that moment, I looked directly at him. Eric. His eyes darted away like a coward caught in headlights, but I didn't flinch. I wasn't here to beg for recognition. I wasn't here to shame them either. I was here to peel back the shiny layers they'd wrapped around their lies. "My name is Eliza," I said. "You probably didn't expect me to look like this, grown up, calm, here in front of all of you. You see, I wasn't invited to this wedding, not because I don't matter, but because I remind them of something they don't want to face." I turned to Marissa. Her hands were clutched tightly around the mic stand, nails digging into her polished palms. "You said you saved him from a broken woman," I continued, voice calm, unshaken. "But what you don't know is that the woman you called broken raised me alone, while he ran." Murmurs. "He left when my mom told him she was pregnant, said he wasn't ready, said she was unstable. You know what unstable looks like? Working 2 jobs, going to school at night, and still showing up to every parent-teacher meeting with your head held high? That was her version of broken, and I lived it." Someone coughed awkwardly. Chairs creaked as people shifted, suddenly unsure whether they should keep smiling or look away. Eric finally spoke, cutting through the rising tension. "Eliza, this isn't the time or the place." "No," I snapped, louder than I meant to. "You don't get to decide that anymore. You gave that up the day you walked out and never looked back." I waited. For birthdays, for graduations. I used to tell myself maybe you were busy. Maybe you cared from a distance, but it wasn't distance. It was rejection. I felt it again. The sting. But I didn't let it crack me. Not now. Not in front of them. Marissa tried to interject, her voice shaky. I didn't mean it like that. Yes, you did, I said sharply. You meant every word, because it made you feel superior, like taking him meant you were winning, but you didn't save him, you just gave him a new place to hide. A woman in the front row lowered her glass. Her eyes were wet. A man 2 seats away gave a slight nod. They were listening now. Not out of pity, but because something inside them recognized the truth. I'm not here to ruin your wedding, I said, taking a breath. I'm here to ruin the fantasy. Eric looked pale now. His lips pressed so tight they disappeared. Because for years, I kept asking myself what I did wrong, why you didn't want to know me. And I blamed my mother too. But the truth is, she was the only one who stayed. She never said a bad word about you. Even when I screamed at her and begged for answers, she just said, maybe one day he'll come around. I turned to the guests again. She covered for him. She lied to protect me from the truth, that some men don't change, they just rebrand. A few people chuckled softly at that, not the mocking kind, the kind that says, damn, she's right. Eric was shaking his head now, trying to gather words. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed bitterly. You think life's fair? You think it was fair watching my mom work herself to the bone while you went off and built this shiny new version of yourself? You think it was fair to watch her cry in the kitchen, thinking I couldn't hear her, every time a Father's Day passed and I asked why you never called? More silence. Heavy, uncomfortable, but necessary. And Marissa, congrats. Really, you married a man who ghosts his own blood. Just make sure he doesn't do to you what he did to us when things get hard, because let me tell you, the cracks come fast, and when they do, he won't fix them. He'll run. He always runs. I looked down for a second, breath catching in my throat, then back up. I didn't come here to make a scene, but I couldn't let your version of the story be the only one people remember. I started to turn away, ready to leave, but just as I took a step back, a voice rose from behind. Wait, Eliza. It was an older woman, Marissa's mother. She stood slowly, eyes locked on me. Her face was unreadable, but something in it shifted. Did he really leave you? She asked softly. Never reached out? I nodded. Not once. She looked at Eric, long and hard. You told us she was unstable, that the mother refused contact. Eric opened his mouth, but no sound came. You lied, she said, her voice cold now. And just like that, the mood shifted again. Guests were no longer smiling. They were whispering, pulling out their phones, glancing at the bride and groom like they were strangers. I didn't need to say another word. I walked off the stage and handed my tray to the nearest server. My heart was still racing, but it wasn't fear anymore. It was something stronger. Power. I didn't ruin the wedding. I unmasked it. I stepped out through the side doors into the cool evening air, the sudden silence pressing against my ears like a wave. The noise inside, the murmurs, the gasps, the unraveling of lies, was now behind me. But I wasn't calm. Not yet. My fingers trembled as I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small, crumpled photo. It was the only one I had of the 3 of us, Eric, my mom, and me as a baby. He was holding me in that picture, smiling. The kind of smile that makes you think maybe, just maybe, things had once been real. But it was a lie, just a snapshot, a moment, and he threw it away like he threw us away. My chest tightened again. I had told myself I would leave right after. No scenes, no second guesses, but something inside me wasn't ready to let it go. Not yet. I was halfway down the hotel steps when I heard the door behind me creak open. Slow, hesitant footsteps followed. Eliza. I didn't turn around. Eliza, please. His voice. That same soft, manipulative tone he used when he wanted to sound sincere. What? I said without facing him. I didn't know you'd come, he said. You shouldn't have done that. This was supposed to be a special day. I turned, slowly. Special? For who? You? Her? Tell me, Eric. Was it still special when you watched your daughter walk out in front of a room full of strangers to remind you she exists? He flinched. Good. I made mistakes, he said quickly. I was young. Things were complicated. No, they weren't, I interrupted. You were a coward, that's all. And now you're still trying to play the victim. He looked down, hands stuffed in his pockets. His new wedding ring glinted under the porch light. I never wanted to hurt you, he muttered. But you did, I replied. And the worst part? You never came back to try and fix it. You just erased us. He exhaled like he was about to confess something big. I didn't trust it. She told me not to come back, he said finally. Your mother. She said we'd be better off without me, that I'd only make things worse. I blinked. You're blaming her now? No, I'm saying I didn't fight it. Because deep down I knew she was right. I was already halfway gone. He said it like that made it okay, like admitting his guilt excused it, but it didn't. You know what I needed? I said, stepping closer. Not perfection, not fairy tales, just effort, one visit, one birthday card, one question about how I was doing. You had 18 years to try, and you never even knocked. He looked away, jaw tight. You had a daughter, I added, and you chose to become a memory instead. A pause. Then, I want to fix things, he whispered. I laughed, harsh and short. You want to fix things because I embarrassed you, because now your new in-laws are asking questions you can't answer. That's not love, Eric. That's damage control. I turned away again, ready to walk down the path and vanish from this story for good, but then he said something that made me freeze. Your mother wrote me a letter, right before she died. My legs stopped. My throat dried. I slowly turned. What? He nodded. She sent it through a lawyer. I didn't read it. I couldn't. I was afraid it would say all the things I didn't want to face. My heart dropped to the floor. She died thinking you didn't care, I said, barely able to get the words out. And you just ignored her last words? I didn't open it, he said. But I still have it. Something inside me burned. Not just anger now. Grief. Raw and ugly. I want it, I said. I want the letter. He hesitated. It's in a box at my apartment, he said finally. I'll get it for you. No, I said. I'll come with you. Right now. He looked stunned. Now? Yes. Because if I go home without it, I'll never be able to let this go. He didn't argue. Maybe part of him knew he owed me at least that much. The drive to his apartment was silent. I stared out the window, watching city lights blur past, feeling like a passenger in the life I was supposed to have known. He parked in front of a tall building. Clean. Fancy. The kind of place he said he could never afford when he was with my mom. He led me upstairs. No words, just the awkward tension of two people who share blood, but not history. The apartment was spotless. Pictures of him and Marissa lined the hallway, vacations, holidays, staged laughter, a perfect life built on silence. He pulled a box from the closet, old papers, documents, a watch, some photographs, and then, at the very bottom, a sealed envelope, my mom's handwriting. I reached for it, but my hands were shaking too much. He held it out, and for a second our fingers touched. Cold. I took the letter and turned to leave. Eliza. I didn't let him finish. Whatever this letter says, I said quietly, doesn't change what you did, but maybe it will remind me what she still saw in you, because God knows I've forgotten. And with that, I walked out. Down the stairs, out the building, onto the sidewalk. I stood under the streetlight, envelope in hand, heart pounding. I didn't open it, not yet. I needed to sit, I needed to breathe. But I knew one thing for sure. This story wasn't over yet. I sat at a quiet park bench a few blocks away, the letter trembling slightly in my hands. The night had grown colder, but I didn't feel it. The city moved around me, cars honking, lights flickering, couples laughing nearby, but none of it touched me. I was somewhere else, somewhere in the space between memory and truth. I stared at my mother's handwriting. Familiar, gentle, every curve of the letters whispering her voice back to me. My heart ached as I peeled open the envelope. My sweet Eliza, if you're reading this, then somehow, despite everything, the truth has found its way back to you. I'm sorry I couldn't say these words face to face. Maybe I was afraid that you'd look at me differently once you knew everything. But you deserve to know. I swallowed hard, eyes already stinging. Eric didn't leave all on his own. I asked him to. After you were born, something in him changed. He became angry. Not always violent, but distant, cold, and sometimes cruel in ways only I could see. He didn't want to be a father. He made that clear. But I still loved him. Foolishly, I thought I could change him. That if I worked hard enough, stayed quiet long enough, he would come around. But it didn't happen. And one night after a terrible argument, he told me I was ruining his life. I packed a bag and left. The truth is, he didn't run away. I did. But only because staying would have destroyed me, and eventually, you. I stared at the page, breath shallow. My world shifted again. The clean lines of blame I'd drawn in my head began to blur. I told him never to contact us again. I didn't want you growing up with a man who saw you as an obligation. I never told you because how do you explain to a child that their father was someone you had to protect them from? Tears rolled down my cheeks, hot and fast. I bit my lip, trying not to sob in the middle of a public park. But Eliza, I never stopped believing that one day you would find your own truth. That you would see the strength in yourself and stop wondering what was wrong with you. There was never anything wrong with you. It was all him. If he has this letter, it means he didn't destroy everything. He kept a part of us, even if he didn't know why. Live your life boldly, my girl. And if the past comes knocking, don't be afraid to face it. You are braver than you know. I love you. Always. Mom. I sat frozen, letter pressed against my chest, sobbing quietly. People passed by, unaware. To them, I was just another girl crying in the dark. But to me, everything had just changed. I had spent years hating Eric, hating his absence. But now there was nuance, complexity, truths that didn't erase pain, but explained it. And suddenly, I wanted to know more. I wiped my tears, stood up, and pulled out my phone. I stared at Eric's number. My thumb hovered over the screen, unsure. Then I dialed. He answered on the second ring. Eliza? I read it, I said. I read the letter. Silence. I didn't know, he whispered. You should have asked, I replied. You should have tried. He was quiet again, then, I didn't deserve to. No, you didn't, I said, but maybe you still owe her something. He exhaled slowly. What do you want from me? Truth, I said. Everything. All of it. There was a long pause. Then, okay? Can we meet? I agreed, not because I wanted to forgive him, but because the story didn't end with a wedding, or a mic drop, or a letter in the dark. There were still shadows to walk through. We met the next morning at a small cafe near the river, neutral ground, public, safe. He looked older than I remembered, less polished than he had at the wedding. His hands trembled slightly as he stirred his coffee. I loved your mom, he began. I don't care, I said flatly. Start with the truth. He looked up. Something in his eyes flickered. Regret? Guilt? Fear? She was right, he said. I wasn't ready. I never wanted to be a father. Not because of you, but because I didn't know how to be. I listened, arms folded, heart guarded. My dad was a monster, he said. He used to hit us, control everything. I swore I'd never be like him, but when your mom got pregnant, all I saw was a trap, a cycle repeating. That's not an excuse, I said. I know, he nodded, but it's the reason I ran. He looked down into his cup. When she left, I let her go. I didn't fight for you because deep down, I thought you were better off without me. And yet, I said, you built a whole new family, got married, threw a wedding, gave speeches. You had another chance, and I was still invisible. I wanted a clean slate, he said. I told myself if I could be better with Marissa, maybe I could bury the past. Pretend it never happened. I stared at him. "And how's that working out for you?" I asked. He didn't answer. I took out the letter and slid it across the table. "She still believed in you," I said. "Even at the end. That's the only reason I'm still sitting here." He picked up the letter, stared at it, and for the first time, his face crumbled. The mask slipped. He cried, not loudly, not theatrically, but real, quiet tears of someone who had finally run out of lies. And I felt something inside me begin to loosen, not forgiveness, not yet, but clarity. I stood up. "I'm not done with this," I said. "There's more I want to know. And you're going to tell me. All of it. One meeting at a time." He nodded slowly, like a child being given homework after a long suspension. And as I walked away, I realized something important. Closure doesn't come with a single act. It comes in layers, in uncomfortable conversations, in letting the truth bleed out slowly until it finally dries. The days that followed felt strange, not bad, just unfamiliar, like I had stepped out of one life and was awkwardly trying on another, unsure if it fit. There was no sudden peace, no sweeping relief, but the silence inside my chest was changing, less hollow now, more open. Eric and I started meeting once a week, same cafe, same time. We called them talks, though sometimes they were just long pauses with coffee in between. I didn't rush him, he didn't pretend, and slowly, piece by piece, the story unfolded. He told me about his childhood, the things he had never said out loud before, his father's fists, his mother's silence, the way he'd learned to survive by shutting down, by walking away before anyone could leave him first. I listened, sometimes with clenched teeth, sometimes with tears I didn't expect. I didn't always believe him, but I didn't stop coming back either. Then one day, I asked the question I had been avoiding since the wedding. "Does Marissa know about me?" He froze. "Not everything," he said. "I told her pieces." "You told her you had a daughter," I clarified, "and she still said what she said at the wedding?" He looked ashamed. "I let her believe things. I didn't correct her. I didn't want to ruin the day." "You let her humiliate my mother in front of everyone," I said. "You let her call her broken, and you said nothing." "I was scared," he said quietly, "scared she'd leave if she saw the truth." "And you were okay with her disrespecting the woman who raised me alone?" I asked. "The woman who never once badmouthed you?" He didn't have an answer, just that same haunted look he'd been carrying since I re-entered his life. But I wasn't asking for apologies anymore. I was asking for action. "I want to talk to her," I said. He blinked. "What?" "Marissa. I want to talk to her. Woman to woman." "That's not a good idea," he said quickly. "It's not up to you," I replied. "She publicly shamed my mother in front of an entire room. She laughed, she raised a glass, and she doesn't even know the story. It's time she did." He hesitated, but in the end, he agreed. 3 days later, we met at a restaurant. Not the wedding venue, thank God. Somewhere smaller, neutral. Marissa arrived 10 minutes late, dressed in crisp beige and pearls, looking exactly like the kind of woman who always got what she wanted. Her smile was polite but guarded. "You're Eliza," she said, like confirming a fact on paper. "I am," I replied. "Thanks for coming." We ordered tea. Small talk lasted exactly 30 seconds. "So," she said, setting her cup down, "what is this about?" I didn't waste time. "You said some things at your wedding, about my mother, about me." Her eyes narrowed slightly. "I didn't know you were there." "That's part of the problem," I said. "You married a man with a daughter, and you didn't even know her name." She folded her hands. "Eric told me you and your mother left, that she didn't want him involved." "He left first," I said, "and she only pushed him away because he already gave up." She tilted her head. "Are you here to defend her?" "No," I said calmly. "I'm here to tell the truth, because when you took that mic and called her broken, you were speaking about someone you never met, someone who carried everything on her own when he walked away." Marissa sighed. "Look, I'm sorry if you felt hurt, but that day wasn't about you." "No," I said, It was about you finally getting your fantasy. Clean, shiny, no baggage, no messy past, just the version of him you think you created. She flinched at that. And maybe he let you believe that, I continued. But you should know, your perfect man left a daughter behind. He missed birthdays, graduations, hospital visits, and he never came back, not until I stood at your wedding with a tray of champagne and reminded him. Marissa's lips pressed together. He said he regretted it. Regret doesn't change the past, I said, but it can change what happens next. So I need you to hear this, and hear it clearly. Don't ever speak about my mother again. Not in jokes, not in passing, not in pity. You don't get that right. There was a long pause, then quietly, "You're right." I looked at her. "I didn't know," she said. "I made assumptions. I don't know what I thought, but I'm sorry." I nodded. "Good, because I didn't come here to ruin anything. I came here to take back what you tried to erase." Marissa looked down, then back up. "Do you want to come to dinner sometime? With us?" I smiled, not because I wanted to accept, but because the offer meant something. "Maybe," I said. "One day." I walked out of that restaurant lighter. Not healed, not whole, but lighter. My mother once said truth was like a storm. It tears everything open, but it also clears the air. And for the first time, I could finally breathe. As I walked through the city, I noticed a little girl on the sidewalk holding her father's hand. He leaned down, listening to her like she was the most important voice in the world. I smiled, a little ache in my chest, but also peace. Because maybe Eric would never be that kind of father to me, but he still could be something. And I was finally something too. Not a secret, not a scar, but a storm that learned how to speak. I didn't go to dinner that week, or the next, not because I was avoiding them, but because something inside me told me it wasn't time yet. I wasn't finished understanding. There were still questions hiding in corners, pieces of the puzzle I hadn't touched yet. Closure isn't a door you walk through, it's a hallway. And I was still walking, so instead, I went back to where it all began. My childhood home. The small 2-bedroom apartment where Mom raised me. It looked smaller now, not in size, but in energy. Like it had been holding its breath all these years and finally exhaled the moment I stepped back inside. The walls were still the soft beige she painted when I was 7. The curtains still swayed the same way when the wind caught them just right. And her books, still stacked the same, alphabetically by author, not title. A strange little quirk she never abandoned. I ran my fingers along the spines, stopping at a worn blue one near the bottom. Her journal, she always kept one, said it helped her think clearly when life got loud. I never read it while she was alive. But now I opened it. August 3rd. Eliza turned 10 today. She asked why she doesn't have a dad like the other kids. I told her we're a team, that some families come in pairs, not threes. She seemed okay with it, but I saw it in her eyes. That quiet wondering. I hate that look. Part of me wants to tell her. The other part thinks she deserves better than that story. January 11th. He sent a birthday card, no return address, just, "Happy birthday, Eliza." I burned it. April 15th. I found Eliza crying in the bathroom. She said some girl at school called her the mistake. I held her for a long time. Then I told her something I hadn't said out loud before. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me. Even if I had to go through hell to get you, I'd do it again." I closed the journal and held it against my chest. That was her revenge. Not bitterness, not rage, but love so complete, so stubborn, it never needed to scream to be heard. She had protected me not by hiding the truth, but by choosing which parts of it to pass on. And now, finally, it was my turn to carry it forward. I stood on the roof of the building that night, watching the lights of the city blur into tiny stars. Somewhere, far off, laughter echoed. Car horns. Life. I pulled out my phone and called Eric. "Hey," he answered. "Everything okay?" "I want to go somewhere," I said. "With you." A pause. "Where?" "Back. To where it started. Where you left." He was silent for a long time. Then, "Okay. When?" "Tomorrow." We drove in silence most of the way. The road to the old town was long, dotted with forgotten shops and rusted signs. I hadn't been back in over a decade. We pulled up outside the rundown house where we used to live, the one before Mom packed us up in the middle of the night and never looked back. He stared at it like it might swallow him whole. "This place," he whispered. "I hated it." "I remember," I said. "You used to disappear for hours." "I wasn't ready," he muttered. "Not to be a dad. Not to be anything." "You were scared," I said. "But she wasn't. She carried everything. Alone." He nodded slowly. "I want you to say that," I said. Out loud. He looked at me. "What?" "Say it." He swallowed hard. "She carried everything. I left, and she didn't fall apart." "Say it louder." "She didn't fall apart," he repeated. "She kept going. She gave you everything. And I gave you nothing." There it was. No excuses, no soft landings, just truth. I nodded. "Thank you." We stood there for a while longer, two ghosts visiting a life that never happened, and then we left. That night, I dreamt of her. Not a memory, something different. She was standing in a sunlit field, her dress flowing, smiling at something in the distance. Then she turned, looked at me, and said, "Now you know." I woke up crying, not because I was sad, but because for the first time, I didn't feel alone in the story. The next week, I showed up for dinner. Marissa opened the door, nervous but welcoming. Eric looked surprised, maybe even a little proud. The table was set for 3. We ate slowly, talked carefully. Marissa told me about her work. I listened. Eric told a story from his college days. We laughed, tentatively but real. At one point there was a pause. Marissa looked at me. "Do you think your mom would have liked me?" I thought about it, about the woman who loved hard and forgave slow. "I think she would have scared you at first," I said honestly. "But eventually, yeah, she would have respected the woman who could admit when she was wrong." Marissa smiled. "I was wrong." "I know," I said. "But you're trying now. That matters." Eric raised his glass. "To second chances." I didn't toast. Not yet. But I didn't walk away either. Because revenge doesn't always come wrapped in fire and fury. Sometimes it looks like showing up anyway. A month passed. Life didn't shift dramatically, but little by little things began to settle in unfamiliar but not unwelcome ways. I started to breathe differently. Lighter. Not because everything was okay, but because I had stopped holding everything in. The weight of silence, of questions never asked, had finally lifted. I found myself revisiting old routines, late walks, sketching in cafes, flipping through photo albums not for answers, but for warmth. And slowly I started writing, not just in journals, but stories. Stories of women who survived things, who weren't soft but weren't hardened either. Just real. Just like my mother. Just like me. One evening, as I packed up from a small community reading where I had read a short piece based on my own story, fictional names, real scars, someone tapped me on the shoulder. A woman, mid-40s maybe, with tired eyes and a warm smile. She didn't say anything at first, just held my gaze like she recognized something in me. Then she said, "Thank you." That was it. But I knew exactly what she meant. I nodded, emotion caught in my throat. I didn't need to explain. Some stories find the people who need them. Later that night, I got a message from Eric. A picture. It was an old photo of me, probably 6 years old, missing teeth and covered in glitter from some school project. My mom stood behind me, her hand on my shoulder, tired but smiling. Underneath, he had written, "Found this in an old box." She was always proud. I just wish I had understood it back then. I stared at it for a long time. Not because I missed that life, I never had it, not really, but because something had shifted. He was beginning to see her, not just as a shadow from his past, but as the woman who carried more than he ever realized. And in doing so, he was seeing me too. Not as a consequence, not as a reminder, but as someone he had the chance to finally know. A week later, Marissa invited me to a fundraiser she was hosting. It was the kind of polished event she thrived in: formal dresses, champagne, name tags. I almost said no, but I remembered what this journey had become about: not comfort, but confrontation. Not revenge in the fire-breathing kind of way, but revenge in the quiet reclaiming of space where you once felt invisible. So I went. People were polite, curious. I introduced myself simply. I'm Eliza. No explanations, no labels. And when someone inevitably asked, "How do you know Marissa and Eric?" I just smiled and said, "We're family, complicated but still." Most people nodded, some raised eyebrows. I didn't care. Halfway through the evening, Marissa pulled me aside. "You okay?" she asked. I nodded. "You don't have to be," she added gently. I looked around the room, full of people who probably knew nothing about what it took for me to stand here. And yet, I was standing. "I am," I said. "And if I'm not, I'll survive that too." Eric approached later, glass in hand, unsure. "Thanks for coming," he said. "You didn't have to." "I know," I replied, "but I wanted to." We didn't say much after that, but he stood beside me as the speeches began, and when Marissa introduced herself and spoke about resilience, about finding strength in unexpected places, she looked directly at me. When the applause ended and people scattered toward dessert, a man I didn't know approached me. "She was talking about you, wasn't she?" he asked. I shrugged. Maybe about 100 women like me." He smiled. "It's rare. People owning their past like that. It makes others brave." I nodded. Or at least, a little less afraid. Later that night, as I stood by the window watching the lights of the city flicker like memories, I realized something. My revenge had already happened. It wasn't the wedding disruption, it wasn't even the confrontation. It was this, standing tall in a place I once would have avoided, being seen not as a mistake, but as a force, not whispering anymore, not hiding. And as I looked at my reflection in the glass, older now, wiser, not untouched but undeniably whole, I whispered to myself the words I had once needed to hear from everyone else. You were never broken. You were just unfinished. The seasons began to shift, and with them, so did something inside me. Healing isn't loud, it doesn't announce its arrival. One day, you just wake up and realize you're not waking up angry anymore. You look in the mirror and your face isn't tight with questions. You stop checking the door to see who never walked through it. I didn't need closure anymore. I didn't need an apology wrapped in guilt or a redemption story that made the pain worth it. I had walked through fire, and somehow, I still had skin. One morning, I was having coffee on my apartment balcony when a letter slipped through the mail slot. No name on the front. Just an old-fashioned, handwritten note sealed carefully. Inside was a simple card. A photo of a beach at sunset. Inside, it read, "Thank you for showing me how to be a father, even if it came late. Signed, Eric." I smiled, not because it made everything right, it didn't, but because it made everything honest. And for once, that was enough. Weeks passed. I continued writing. The stories weren't always mine, but they were born from pieces of me. Tiny echoes of a girl who grew up faster than she wanted to, who stood at a wedding she wasn't invited to, and still chose not to leave. Publishers started calling. An agent reached out. Things moved fast, but I stayed slow. I had learned that rushing through pain doesn't earn you peace any faster. Then, on a rainy afternoon, I found myself back at the wedding venue. I wasn't sure why I went. Maybe to close the loop. Maybe just to see if it still made my hands shake. It didn't. The space looked smaller now. The grand chandeliers no longer held the power they did when laughter felt like knives. I stood near the corner where I had delivered those words, where the entire room had turned cold, then quiet, then electric. I closed my eyes and breathed in, the smell of roses, the faint echo of music, and then nothing. Just stillness. Just me. I opened my eyes to see the manager watching me from a distance. He walked over. "You were here a while back, weren't you?" he asked gently. I nodded. "Yeah, not one of my best nights." He smiled. I don't know what you said that day, but I've never seen a room flip like that. It stuck with me. I laughed softly. I didn't plan it. I just finally said what needed to be said. He nodded. Sometimes that's all it takes. Back outside, the rain had lightened to a mist. I stood for a long moment under the awning, watching it fall. It felt cleansing, not symbolic, just wet, honest weather. And then I turned and walked away, not because I was running, but because I had already arrived at everything I needed. That night, I visited my mother's grave for the first time in a while. I sat by the headstone, fingers tracing the carved name. I didn't cry this time. I didn't beg for signs or wish for a do-over. I just talked. Told her about the book, about Eric's letter, about the dinner parties that now ended in laughter and not tension, about the people who were beginning to understand the woman she was, through the woman I had become. And then I said it. Thank you for carrying me through the fire, for letting me find my own voice instead of handing me yours, for being my revenge, not with bitterness, but with grace. A breeze passed, just a small one, but it felt like something. Later that week, my first book hit shelves. I didn't go to the launch party. I went to the lake instead, sat with my feet in the water, hair a mess, phone off. I didn't need applause. I had already lived the story. The world will always make room for villains who are charming and heroes who stay quiet. But I learned something louder, something better. That real revenge isn't destruction. It's rebuilding. It's walking into rooms you once feared. It's looking people in the eye who once looked through you. It's living so full that even the ghosts of your past watch in silence. I didn't get revenge that day at the wedding. I became it. And the best part? I didn't need permission.